Hello and welcome to Parallels, the Freeplay 2019 showcase. My name is Chad Toprak and I'm the director of Freeplay, the world's oldest and longest running independent games festival. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the lands on which we stand. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and to all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be here today. Sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Short talks and heartfelt games. Parallels is a one-night showcase of some of Australia's and New Zealand's most unique, experimental and personal games, from the artsy to the weird to the provocative and punk. For over 15 years, Freeplay Independent Games Festival has been exploring these vital margins, showcasing exceptional makers and artists, pushing boundaries of the art form. So we're here to listen to about 12 different developers presenting 12 different games. I tried to end up with 11 like last year, you know, the two parallel lines. It didn't work out. But before we kick off, I just wanted to thank our partners. Freeplay is proudly supported by the Australian government through the Australian Council for the Arts and its art funding and advisory body. I want to thank RMIT, our venue, and ACMI as well, for allowing us to be in this amazing and gorgeous space. And of course, I want to say a big thank you to Creative Victoria for organising Melbourne International Games Week and having Parallels officially part of the Games Week program. So a bit of housekeeping. Our hashtag, if you want to tweet along tonight, is hashtag Parallels19. You can optionally also use the hashtag Migwa19 hashtag as well. If you're ever feeling overwhelmed, because a lot of the talks tonight will be quite personal and intimate, and so if you ever feel like you need to take a break, feel free to do so. Step out and have a fresh breath of air, and then you can come back if you're feeling like it. I don't think I have anything else to say other than that. So maybe we can start off by introducing our first speaker. So Max Myers will be our first speaker, and he'll be presenting Paint Game, a gorgeous little game. Max is a maker of various interactive things and a budding researcher, based out of Melbourne. They can be found by rivers and admiring good trees. Approach with caution, they scare easy. Please make Max feel welcome.
There we go. Oh, wait. I need my notes. Okay. I suddenly realized, like, halfway through all of this, I didn't do an introductory side. So, hi, I'm Max. I made Paint Game. I'll get more into that soon. So let's get started. Some preamble. For those of you who don't know, this is Paint Game. I need to get into kind of what Paint Game is. It's basically a colouring book that is a 3D environment that you can walk around. It's a town that is colourful, that you can fill in and do what you want with. It's about making a mess and it's about exploring that mess. The idea I wanted to give is that you're handed a paintbrush and that you are a toddler and that you're painting on everything. It's kind of about like painting outside the lines. So I gave you the lines and then gave you only tools that would make a mess outside of them. So that was the general idea. This whole talk, I'm going to be talking kind of about my process, but one of the main things I wanted to highlight just very early on is this game wasn't made ostensibly just by me. I might have put it all together and I might have done a lot of the coding, but this game wouldn't exist without Maze Wallen's incredible music or even the support of all of the people around me. This game wasn't really made by just me. I might have done the making, but I was supported all the way by heaps and heaps of people. But to get into it, Paint Game was made in about 5 months or 2 years or 5 years, give or take. So let's get into that. To give you some background, today I'm really kind of talking about process and how I assembled Paint Game piece by piece, stolen from my past self. Game dev for me is kind of about scrounging through the trash that I've left behind from other projects and from a lot of other things. I make games in a similar way to how I cook. I open up the fridge, I have a look at the leftovers, I have a look at whatever I have in the cupboard, and I kind of throw things together and scrounge it all from there. A flavour of this, a touch of that, and whatever I can do. Why should I remake something when I have a perfectly working version just over there? So the ingredients for one Paint Game are a 5-year slow-cooked painting mechanic, tree designs from a 2D game, the font that I've always used, houses from a paper plane flying game and an oil painting filter as well, and the outline effect from a museum. So let's work backwards. Oh, that looks really wonderful from my perspective. In April, I finished up with a game called Detritus, and it has this really nice outline effect. And so having put that down and picked up another one of my projects that had an oil painting smear effect, my brain started putting them together. And so because my brain told me so, I put them together. So this is where we start. We start with this kind of smearing painting effect and this black outline, and I cobble it all together. And then I start thinking about painting and I start wondering what it would look like, and my brain latches onto this idea and I can't get rid of it, so I start making it. And this is where we kind of end up with. So I'm taken already, like I finished a game, I've taken a bit of piece from here and there, and I needed to get the idea out of my head. So I stole the buildings from the paper plane flying game along with those 2 pieces of code and those mechanics, and I started testing it together, mocking it up, and seeing where I could go into what earnestly became Paint Game. So I've already stolen a whole bunch of stuff. Paint Game was part of kind of a project I started in 2017, in which I wanted to make as much as I could, as fast as I could. And there's 2 easy ways to do that. The best way to do that is that you start something and you get it done rather than good. You don't polish, you just try and get it done as quick as possible and put it out there. And then you steal liberally from yourself. You take as much as you can. But here's the thing, for all intents and purposes, that's how Paint Game starts. But hindsight's 2020, and Paint Game is a successor to another series of games in a different way. I didn't think, when I started off this project, I didn't think it was a success. I didn't plan for this, but in hindsight, it can't really be talked about outside of the context of these couple of games. And from these ones, I took what I learned and only what I liked. So we're going to rewind a bit, about 5 years, to me, and you're in second year uni, and you made this puzzle game that's about painting different dimensions into existence. You hand it in, and then you forget about it, or, well, you don't actually forget about it. And it sits there in your head for 2 more years, and then you graduate. So this is RGBES, this is kind of like the proto version. And it's a puzzle game where you're painting different dimensions. Depending on the color, things appear, things disappear. And it's all about that kind of mechanic. It was janky and it was broken, but it was kind of where all of this starts. And then you go on and you keep making the effect as many times. I've remade it probably, this is 3 versions. I've probably remade it like 8 or 9 different times in different projects, just continuously working on this same thing, refining it, and building it and putting it in different projects and also stealing parts and pieces from everything else. Each of these was a brand new attempt kind of at this same mechanic. And then in 2017, I put out Dimensions, the updated version of RGBES. So Dimensions is basically 2.0. It's new and improved and it works much better. It's cleaner, it's less glitchy, it has like fancy shaders and all these cool things that I learned in the intervening years. And for the most part, that's where I thought this story ended. At a kind of bad puzzle game that made me realize I'm not very good at making puzzle games. But what I really did was I let it sit in my head and stew and stew and stew and sit there. So what I did for Paint Game, I realized, was I took all of the parts that I actually liked about this, which is the wandering through the mess you made, all of the different pieces, and then I started bringing them forward. I've made this game like 3 or 4 more times, and I'll probably keep remaking it. Because that's what I wanted to get at here. Paint Game is part of like a lineage of games. It's a part of a working history, and it's kind of how I make games, in that I didn't want to just talk about why or what my inspiration was. I wanted to talk through how Paint Game only really exists in this context of having been made and remade. I wanted to show you the kind of like messy roots of how everything gets put together. Paint Game is part of like that project I started in 2017 when I didn't have a body of work, and now I do. It's half library, half spice cupboard that I can take from and mix and match, that I can piece together and build on and work on continuously. At the start of this, I said I wanted to talk about every game that isn't Paint Game, but they're all kind of Paint Game as well. There was this quote I heard from Guillermo del Toro in which he said, "I cannot pontificate about it, but by the time I'm done with my career, I will have metaphorically made one movie, and it's all the movies I want." And that's kind of what this is. I made one game by making a lot of other games that led me down this path. I could have talked about all of the other games that led here, because I've made heaps of others, but this just happens to be one convenient narrative. So by the end of my career, I'll probably have made 100 games that are in each a tiny little way one game. Thanks for listening. Okay.
Thank you so much for that, Max. Max is truly one of the most talented developers I know, and each time they produce something and share it on Twitter, I just get shocked and amazed. Looking forward to what comes next. Up next, we have Olivia Haines presenting Dollhouse. Olivia is an artist and game developer from Melbourne who loves creating personal, feminine games and colourful artwork. She completed a Bachelor of Design in Games at RMIT in 2017 and has since been working on her own projects as a freelance artist, contributing to local games such as Wayward Strand, Intergalactic Space Princess and Knuckle Sandwich. A huge round of applause for Olivia, please.
Oh my God. Hi everyone. My name is Olivia, and I'm so excited to be talking at my favorite Games Week event ever tonight. So I'm a game developer and I live here in Melbourne, and I've always been making art in some form or another, although drawing and 3D modeling and making games is what I mostly do. I've been going through a bit of a drawing phase at the moment, so please enjoy my illustrated slides. I've had a lot of different art phases as I've grown up, and I've tried reinventing myself many different times over the years, just trying to figure out both what I actually care about as an artist and whether I can contribute anything valuable to the world. My art's aesthetic on the surface has looked pretty consistent the last 2 to 3 years, but it's changed a lot over time, and it could change again drastically at any moment. But I think what's always been kind of consistent about my work, subconsciously at least, is an appreciation of nostalgia and a desire to hold on to memories by, I guess, putting a bit of myself into my work. I think I definitely got this from my parents. My granddad had a really keen interest in photography, and thanks to it, we have a really huge archive of photos and home videos going back 50 to 60 years. My dad carried this on in a way. Growing up, I'd often see him scanning boxes and boxes of photos and adding dates to them and trying to fill in all the gaps in our ancestry information. As for my mum, even though she doesn't necessarily have a creative hobby, she really loves sharing detailed stories about her childhood and her family and her hometown, and it's really clear that she values holding on to these memories. A lot of parents are like this, of course, and a lot of people are like this, but I guess I only noticed recently how much I took notice of this growing up. So when I started making games, I drew on my childhood a lot for inspiration, but in the last year or so, I've been a lot more interested in creating games that capture my present life too. I really love the idea of making a bunch of little vignette games that capture specific special moments of my life and being able to open them in 5 to 10 years and show to like my future children in the same way that you would share a family photo album. Making games with this kind of mindset has been really fulfilling to me, but part of me has also wondered if this isn't a valuable focus to have. Like maybe it's not really contributing much to video games as a whole if I'm being selfish and making games for myself. But something happened quite recently which sort of changed my outlook on things a bit. I was home last month in Queensland at my parents' place, and the afternoon before I left, I was going for a walk along the beach and taking photos of a lot of the native plants in the area. Whenever I'm home, I love to just go for really long walks and just take in all these sights that I never get to see anymore. But this time I was specifically paying attention to my surroundings because I want to use them as reference for the next game I make. I didn't know at the time, but while I was doing this, a really bad bushfire had broken out just a few kilometres from where I was. Thankfully, no one in our area was hurt, but the damage to the surrounding wildlife and parklands was pretty disastrous. As I flew home the next day and I looked out the plane window, Queensland's pretty beaches and forests were completely engulfed in smoke. I was really shocked by the whole thing. I had had experience with bushfires and natural disasters before, but it was just really crazy how I was just thinking about how much I'd like to recreate my hometown in a game, and then suddenly a huge part of it was taken away. On my way home, it really hit me that making personal games is a lot more important than I realized. Not only is my personal life constantly changing, but so is the world around me, and so many parts of it deserve to be remembered and preserved in some way. I know this is probably a bit darker than you were expecting from the official Dollhouse Parallels 2019 talk. But when I think about all this stuff, it just makes me feel so grateful that I made Dollhouse in the first place, because it really captures more about my life than anything else I've made so far. It started off as a really simple, cute idea to pay tribute to my favorite childhood toys. But due to the events happening in my life at the time I was making it, it morphed into so much more, and it really reflects my present life way more than my past. I made it in the weeks leading up to moving in with my partner, and the excitement I was feeling at the time about our future dream home is really embedded in the game. It was also the first game I'd made in about a year or so, after feeling really insecure about game development for a long time. And when I first showed it at the Arty After Party last Games Week, I thought everyone would hate it, honestly. But that wasn't the case at all. So now the game also just reminds me of how I can actually push through those kinds of anxieties and learn to just make stuff no matter what. The game itself isn't perfect, but it could be terrible and I'd probably still love it because of all these memories that have become attached to it. When there's so much impending change and uncertainty happening in our industry, it makes me so happy to know that I have made this game, Dollhouse, that I can, no matter what happens to me in the future, I can always open and it'll take me back to this really great time in my life. Dollhouse will always remind me of my current friends and my relationship and my life in Melbourne and being here tonight. So I guess video games have become my own little way of archiving and keeping everything important to me alive. And I hope I can share many more with you all in the future. That's the end, thanks.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Olivia's passion and dedication for her art style is truly inspiring. Her art and craft has truly come a long way. Every illustration that she releases has sparked joy, and I'm truly blessed to call her a friend. Cool. Up next, we have a lovely friend from Sydney, Fenreliania. Fen creates small experimental games as a way to express their feelings and experiences when words fail them. They've been poorly fiddling with games since early high school, playing with many different special interests along the way. Let's please make Fen welcome.
That button there? What do you mean that button there? No, that's the wrong one. It's working. If I faint on stage, it's not part of the act. So how about you? Let's start this off by answering the most obvious question. Who am I? Why am I on stage? I don't know the second part. My name's Fenreliania. You can just call me Fen, you don't have to pronounce it. And I am at Fenreliania on Twitter. Please follow me, my ego will appreciate it. I'm non-binary, I'm from Sydney, and I work full-time on non-game dev things, unfortunately. I'm a relentless creator of uncategorizable games. I think I've made 20 or so, I don't know. I'm told this is good and not an affliction. I'm someone who took 2 university units on game-related things and none on art history or film studies or anything like that, so I'm kind of self-taught and I don't have a lot of context, unfortunately. I do my best, and I'm extremely cute. So let me talk about 2 games. First, I Must Reach the Top. It was released in 2016, about 6 months after my previous game, Phasm. To quickly summarize it, it's a game where you climb a cliff from the bottom to the top. You have a button for each hand. If you let go, you fall to the bottom. And as you go up, different things change. Like the music starts, or the sun comes out, or you climb slower. So as you get closer to the top, you actually get slower, and it's not possible to reach the summit. It's a very depressing game. It takes about 5 minutes. My housemate stubbornly played it for half an hour. So what was the inspiration, and how did I convert that into these, like, this doesn't look like a game, but how did I make that? Like, well, a few months into Phasm, slow progress was dragging down my energy, which was slowing down my progress. Some people were interested at first, but it was ultimately met with mostly silence. I had this angry, depressed urge to make something incredibly simple and clean and easy. And this game took 2 days, so that worked. So how did I convert that urge into this? Well, I mean, for starters, I learned about animation curves. Turns out they got me thinking about turning a simple linear progress into something nuanced, like some nuanced results. So I was also able to fiddle with them a lot. So I had a lot of they were basically like levers to play around with. And anytime I made a mistake or overdid something, I reinterpreted what the result was and tried to figure out what does that actually mean for this. I think this is actually my favorite game that I've made. And I would really love you to play it. Next, I want to talk about Every Brick Laid, which actually has a premise. You're playing a platformer, and you have to collect the orbs, except the level isn't there. You just have to build it yourself, I guess. So on a fundamental level, it's about placing blocks to grab the orbs to unlock new blocks. It's simple. There's like, the blocks have different properties, like a tall one you can teleport to the top of, stuff like that. Implicitly, the goal is to collect all the orbs, which gives you the final block. And if you activate it, if you don't want spoilers, look away, this happens. So you know you win. So how and why did I make something like this? Well, I didn't really have a support network, and I was really feeling it. I didn't feel comfortable to being close to like a couple of people I meet. So reaching out was hard, and people reaching out to me wasn't really reliable. I felt like I had to deal with everything myself, even creatively. No existing solutions seemed to do what I wanted them to. Physics were janky, models were too generic, music was in a dozen cat videos. I had complete freedom and no hints. So I could make games, sure, but with nobody around me hiring someone who's not established, or no way I could afford to go to uni a second time. I'd have to make my own path somehow. Mechanics came to me pretty quickly. Anytime I was on the verge of a breakdown, it felt like I was falling off my self-made perch, and there was no net to catch me. Whenever I hit the bottom, all I could do was pick up the pieces and work my way back up the tower. I had this sense that other people knew something I didn't, or were following a path that just didn't exist for me. It felt like when you play a game and a glitch stops you progressing, and you look up a walkthrough and you're wondering what game it's for. So I imagined a game that acted like everything was fine while it refused to give you the basic tools you needed to play it. I don't think I quite executed on that part, but I'm still happy with the result. So I do actually have a template for making these games that don't really have a template. I always start out with a core purpose. Everyone already does this, but like a lot of people start out with something a bit more complex. They think of a game mechanic or a genre. For I Must Reach the Top, it was the point where weariness overcomes hope. For Every Brick Laid, it was build for yourself what others seem to simply have. Next, I try and visualize ways to express that goal. This still isn't mechanics. I Must Reach the Top started out mostly with a sore feeling in my shoulders and memories of cross-country, having to finish when halfway through I'd already run out of steam. Next, where are my notes? Oh, right. This is when I start looking at mechanics and genres. This is when I try and excise things to only the bits that I need. Anything that isn't adding to the goal is just a waste and makes everything worse. And lastly, I fill in the gaps. Visuals, sound systems, whatever needs to be in there to work. I try and think of this as drawing strings between existing pillars rather than adding new elements or anything. So both of these games have been pretty sad, kind of ugly, rather short, not exactly fun. They're free, so they haven't made me any money, and I think like a couple of vlogs have written about them. So why do I make them? I've watched 100 videos about game feel. I know how to make pretty good FPS controls. I am surprisingly good at writing. So why not make fun games? Now, these reasons are all equally important. First of all, to get it out. To formulate my thoughts into something comprehensive that words can't fully encapsulate. I think that's partly autism, maybe. Not sure. To show people they're not alone and help them identify and solidify their understanding of themselves and the people around them. Give them examples. To untangle game design from the overwhelmingly commercial atmosphere it's been in for the last 30 years. There are plenty of other people doing this. But I really want to grab the techniques and figure out how to make personal and artistic goals instead. And finally, to have my voice heard. So I hope I've said something worth hearing. Thank you for listening.
I love and really appreciate Fen's approach to experimental games, and I hope that it inspires others to to make small, weird, and unconventional games and share them. All right, up next, we have Kalonica, Quigley, and Jason Bakker presenting Need 4 Billion Speed. That's how it's pronounced. Kalonica is a 3D artist and game developer currently working as an animation director for Wayward Strand, modelling and animating creatures for Dead Stake Drive, and collaborating with House on Untitled Goose Game. Jason is a game maker currently working on Wayward Strand alongside co-teaching and mentoring within the game design program at RMIT. He previously worked at League of Geeks where he led development on Armello. Kalonica and Jason, everyone.
Sorry. There'll just be a little bit of setup, and we've also got some awesome volunteers who are going to be waiting a little bit. All right, come on up. Thank you, volunteers. We could just on this side here somewhere so that you can see. Is that enough? Okay.
So around this time last year, I was one of the creators commissioned to make a game for the event called the Arty After Party. Jason had previously suggested that we collaborate on something sometime, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity. I remember a conversation I had last year at Robert Yang's Bar SK exhibition, where a mate was looking at the games and saying that they wanted to make more things that were meaningful. They wanted to make games about love and identity and life. And I was like, nah, I just want to make car game. I just want to, drive around, maybe toot a horn. I think I was tired of what felt like this constant pressure to make something big and deep and important. I wanted to make something that simply felt good. So when Jason and I were discussing what to make, we had a big chat about our favorite driving experience, both in the real world and in games. I thought a lot about the old white spray-painted purple 1987 Nissan Irvine I had as a kid growing up in rural Victoria. I would drive it around the paddocks near my house, and I would take it for laps just for fun and maybe get some air, but don't tell my parents. But there was never any reason for driving outside of it feeling good. We realized that neither of us engage much with driving that is aggressive, competitive, punishing, or about an objective. What we like is the sensation, the speed, the freedom, and the tension between being in control and never feeling entirely in control. We also considered that the game would be shown at a party. How could multiplayer work? What would a cooperative driving game look like? Just how good is Thomas Bowker's draw? So we started up the Unity game engine and we're like, let's give this project a temporary name so we're forced to change it later. And we called it Need for Speed. And then later we added these weird numbers and letters in reference to the numbers we use in our cool game.
Yeah. So the strange, glitchy stuff that happens in the game is a side effect of how game engines work. 3D game engines are optimized to work really well in a relatively small area, close to what is called the origin point. The position of everything in the game is calculated relative to this point, and using floating point values. And this works fine for objects that are like a meter away from the origin or even a few kilometers away. But when you're like 4 billion meters away, the engine has a bit of a tough time. Is this object at 4 billion meters or 4 billion and 7 meters? And then this is what happens. Like I'd always been curious about this quirk of game engines, so on the first day that we got together, we took a 3D model and moved it out into that space. Unity complained at us. It knows it's going to have a bit of trouble dealing with objects at 4 billion meters away from the origin, but we could rotate this model around and see it morph wonderfully in each axis, contorting to fit this low fidelity environment. So getting back to driving, we loaded up the Unity car demo and tried linking the entire world's displacement to the car's speed, which means that as the car speeds up, the entire world moves further and further out, like into glitch space, yeah. And this was like really interesting and fit into exactly what we wanted to explore around driving and hovering on the edge of control. But at this point, we were still trying to turn it into an intentional game idea. So we had lunch and talked for a couple of hours about a driving gardening game where you turn the soil and create grooves, and then plant seeds along the grooves, and then water the seeds, and then maybe as you drive around and glitch out, that helps the seeds grow. And then as soon as we got back, we added like a quick debuggy way to spawn a groove beneath the car to kind of do the soil thing. But then when we first tested it, we realized that as we were driving, rather than digging down, the grooves would slowly lift the car into the air. And then also turning somehow like bent the grooves and forming this beautiful track through the sky. And it just felt exhilarating.
So we played the game a bunch after that. There was a few times that I felt very guilty that Jason was sitting there working away and I was just playing the game. I think one of the most important lessons Need for Billion Speed has taught me is how valuable it can be to work out what a game is through the act of making it. All the personal games I have made or intended to make, I absolutely think about the whole entire thing first, exploring every possible way it could be in my mind, imagining the process of making it, the iterations it would go through, what the player might think about, to the point of exhaustion, to the point that it no longer feels interesting or rewarding to actually sit down and make the game. It's often at this point that I'll just discard the entire thing. But it's tricky to do that with Need for Billion Speed. This game is more about creating a space, an opportunity for players to make their own fun. It didn't need to be complex to be good. So it makes sense that this game's design is driven by our own experience of playing and enjoying it.
So like from this point on, the making process felt very organic. Like we were responding to how we were playing it, feeling out like adding things or making changes, keeping what was interesting or enjoyable, and then allowing further accidental developments to become a piece of the whole. And there were a few technical or design problems we wanted to solve, but the solutions often tended to be interesting or to have interesting side effects. For instance, if you're stuck like that blue car is in the corner, you can press Y, and what that does is it just moves, like when players are stuck, it just moves the entire world like way, way, way further out into like the unknown. And then it comes back, and by the time it comes back, the car is in a totally different position and spinning wildly through the air. And that's how we added like a reset button. And then like, yeah, so just throughout this whole process, we were just playing it a lot, continuously like enjoying the thing that we had made in the first few hours of working together, discussing it, tinkering with it, and just trying to only change what was necessary.
I felt very intimidated to make the car model, knowing that it would greatly affect the tone of the game. We replaced Unity's default futuristic space car that looks like an electric razor with an ordinary 1988 Nissan Micra. Suddenly flying around isn't a special ability of the car. It's the space that's special. And there is no driver. You are the car. It's a car heaven with no competition, no danger, no rules. It's freedom and expression. The driving is an act of creation, but in this glitchy world, you're never quite in control enough to feel as if you own it. There's no feeling of loss if you make a mistake or it glitches out. It's more about creating an impression of your experience. Also, the cars have little horns that go beep, beep. Need for Billion Speed is not like anything else I've made before. I feel like so much of what I create needs to justify itself by meaningfully answering the question, why? Because it feels good. There were many times making this game that Jason and I actively said to each other, let's just do the easiest, least stressful, most fun thing. There were many times, it made me realize how often I think something needs to be stressful and difficult and overwhelming in order for it to feel worth doing. I love our cool game.
I love Need for Billion Speed, the experience of playing it and the experience of making the game itself. But maybe the most important thing to me is how we made it. We were kind to each other, respectful of each other's time and energy, and we just didn't work ourselves silly over it. And we had so much fun with it, and it was just really nice to create this weird, wonderful thing together. Thanks. And thanks to our awesome volunteers. Thank you. Thank you.
Kalonica and Jason are some of the most talented artist game makers I know. They truly understand what it means to approach games as arts practice. I forgot to mention earlier, but both Need for Billion Speed and Olivia's Dollhouse were commissioned games for the Arty After Party, which Hovergarden, Andrew Brophy and I run. Both games are now celebrated locally and internationally. If you were at GCAP, you would have noticed 4 Billion Speed in the Hovergarden space. And if you're going to be at PAX, you'll see Dollhouse at the Fantastic Next exhibit. If there are any government people in the room, this is the outcome of your support. Please, yeah. Huge, yeah. I can't stress how important it is to support non-commercial work. So please continue to support cultural organisations like Freeplay and Hovergarden. Up next, we have Alex and Josh. Alex is an illustrator, designer and programmer, currently working as co-founder alongside Josh Tatangelo at 2 Point Interactive. They spend most of their time producing games and interactive playthings, which focus on motion, tactility and introspection. Please welcome Alex and Josh.
Thanks, Chad. And thank you for having us at this incredible theatre. Thank you, Freeplay. Thank you, everyone. This is very nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Been in front of an audience this big since like grade 3 school play. And that wasn't a fun time, so I hope this will be better. Today, Josh and I, we run a little studio called 2 Point Interactive, and as Chad said, we make games and interactive playthings. And today we're showing you a little game that we've been working on for a while called Heavenly Bodies. And we're going to start right with a playthrough, but more like a brief hello to the game. But we're also just going to talk a little bit about the process which we use to create it, and like why we're creating it and what we love about it. And yeah, let's play some Heavenly Bodies. Yep.
Okay.
35?
Yeah, 22. 20.
Video. So basically, within heavenly bodies, there's no gravity, you're in space, and you're a cosmonaut. You can use your left joystick to move your left arm and your right joystick to move your right arm. As I said, there's no gravity, and your arms and hands are your only means about like moving around this weightless environment. You can grab on any you can grab onto any surface that you like, or any object, or anything.
It's massive up there.
It's so big.
It's huge. It's bigger than us.
It's gonna get my nose.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're making good time. So basically, we are trying to create a game which really tries to like capture the essence and magic of what it feels like to use a body in zero gravity. We're trying to do like what we feel like is often like overlooked in a quote unquote space genre, which is focused on that like elemental movement and beauty and grace, which is a weightless world. Yeah. So where are we?
Yeah.
We're making good time.
Yeah. Maybe we should talk about why mechanics.
Yeah, I guess so, I mean, I'll talk about the game broadly. From a higher level, you're performing a variety of space missions. So you're doing everything from like space telescope assembly to the unloading of precious space cargo to cosmic botany. And the pretense to everything with this is of course there's no gravity, so it's all about understanding how to use your weight and motion and your hands to like manipulate these devices.
Yeah. And legs.
And legs.
Yeah.
For anyone who kind of knows our history in games, we love to create things which have a focus on like tactility, physicality, and motion. So we like to create games that at like the most like elementary level just feel good to use. So this is like largely what this is about. This is a single player game, and I will also join in with Josh as it's also a local multiplayer game. But this is a game about your body. And oh my gosh, we're upside down. Okay, all right. Where are we? All right.
Go this way. So, as you can probably see already, it looks like it's a comedy game, but it's actually not. So we've maybe we stuffed that up, perhaps. So what we've noticed is we've been designing it for one person, and that's totally fine. And when you're in the space by yourself, it feels quite like stoic and serious, and it's just you out there, and it's very methodical. And then as soon as another person comes in, it just turns into this competitive kind of sloppy like mess of an operation. And I think we're kind of, at first we were a bit worried about it, but I think now that's kind of the beauty of it. It's down to two people to either cooperate or just make it hard, or just don't have a bad time in space. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Should I do the?
All right, yeah. Let's have a bad time.
So it's good.
Whoa! Grab it. I got the briefcase.
Got it.
It's okay. It's okay. How long has that been already? What time
I'd say it's probably like 4 minutes now. All right, so that's probably a good time to stop the demo and explain.
Just kind of grab the lamp.
Yeah, just snap it off.
All right, we got.
I got it.
Oh, yeah, nice. All right.
Oh, okay.
Come back in. All right.
All right, so now's a good chance to kind of backtrack and just talk about how we kind of came to this idea. So we've been asked a few times, like, where did it come from? And it was mainly just like a desire to solve a mechanical problem. So we were thinking, like, how simple can we make this system of moving in space? Like, it's quite complicated. Like, the human body is a pretty strange thing to be trying to use in outer space. And we thought, maybe we can really boil it down to this idea of using one stick, and no matter where that stick is pointing, some part of your body will kind of go for it, whether it's a leg or an arm. And at first we were like, okay, maybe we're onto something. Like, maybe this is a good way to take it. So we did our first prototype, which I have a video of. So this is maybe like 2 or 3 years old, and it didn't work out too well. So this is kind of where it started. And it's just a complete mess. So the character is reaching for that dot that you can see, and it's just horrible. Like, you can't move, you can't go anywhere. We put jetpacks on it because we thought that was maybe the way to kind of progress with it. And it just wasn't working. So at that point, we were kind of like, all right, that was somewhat interesting and fun to play with, but we sort of shelved it at the time. We had other client work and priorities, so it sort of went on the back burner for like a good year or two, I think.
Long.
Yeah, but we're always thinking about it because we never really cracked it. And then the thing that kind of like kicked it back off was actually a birthday present from Alex. So he got me this book called Soviet Space Dogs, which is kind of like the ideal birthday present, really, because I really like dogs, I like space, and I like illustration. So I was really into this book, and just like flicking through it, I was kind of like, we were having these ideas of like, oh, we need to get that space game back out, but we'd kind of hit a bit of a bottleneck. And then we thought, like, wouldn't it be super nice if this game kind of looked and felt like an old kind of like 50s, 60s illustration, but in motion. So it sort of like kicked off a bit of a challenge, I suppose, to like make some shaders that were trying to capture this like 2-3 tone illustrative kind of graphic look. And I think it gave us like a little bit of a spark to kind of pick it back up.
Totally.
Yeah, so after that point, it was kind of like, let's just give it a month. Like, let's completely just absorb ourselves in it, get it looking right, feeling right, get rid of this control scheme that wasn't working. And I think that turned out to be a good idea.
Yeah.
So that was like halfway through this year, and since then we've applied for funding and we've shown it at festivals. And
Thanks, Film Vic.
yeah, thank you, Film Vic. So that was kind of a massive driving factor to just sort of validating it and being like, maybe there is something in here if we're enjoying this kind of these mechanics and the look of it. Like, let's just keep going with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's where we've been, and moving like forward visually from this kind of art direction, been like massively influenced by the work of a Russian architect. Her name was Galina Balashova. So her background was actually in architecture and Soviet housing. And what happened was when the race to space began back in the late 50s and the 60s, she was taken away from designing Soviet housing to apply all of her sort of methodology and aesthetic to designing for outer space. And there's just something really kind of interesting that I find about the idea of designing for this environment that you have no idea about. Like the illustration that you can see here, that's basically like a room. She sort of took this methodology of thinking, if we're sending people out into space, into the unknown, it shouldn't feel intimidating and over the top and sci-fi and have, just junk everywhere. So she went with this idea of like color coding the floor and the ceiling and providing these spaces that basically just feel like you're on Earth, you're not isolated out there floating around. And it proved to be like super successful. She's designed from like, I think it was 1957 through to like retirement in 1991. And a lot of her work is still kind of like in orbit, it's still out there. And I just think she's just a really good designer.
As are you, Josh.
So yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah. So yeah, like we're happily working away on this thing now, and yeah, like thanks for all your support so far. Like if you'd like to come check it out at PAX, we're there. But yeah, Space Team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love how much control Alex and Josh have over the games they make and their craft. All their games feel really, really good to play. I love the humor. I love the tension. I have no words. Thank you. Up next, we have a developer from New Zealand, Demi Schänzel. Demi is a non-binary maker of small experimental games, an experienced interface designer, and currently studying a master's in digital humanities. Sheltered away somewhere deep within the Southern Hemisphere, they're oft-most discovered snuggling up before their computer, dabbling away on small generative code or haphazardly spilling tea over their keyboard. I've played Demi's game, The Library of Babble, for hours in my bed, and I truly appreciate that it exists. The Library of Babble was also featured in the Hover Garden space at GCAP this year as well. A huge round of applause for Demi, please.
Hey, hello. I'm not sure. There's supposed to be something showing, but alas. There we go. Ah, yay. One moment. Okay, hey, hello, good evening. It's about like 11 p.m. in New Zealand at the moment, so I'm quite tired. And there's way too many people here. But otherwise, hello, my name is Demi. I'm sort of queer, non-binary, and I'll mostly be reading from my phone. I'm a small-time interface designer, as you've heard. And I sort of have this soft love for prose and spoken word, and these sort of smaller moments that occasionally occur while you're sort of online. And tonight I was just sort of hoping to talk about my game for a bit, and these sort of central inspirations and the journey it sort of took me on over the last 6 months or so. About a year ago, I began designing the Library of Babble, a small experimental prototype designed around even smaller acts of storytelling in prose, within which storytellers such as yourselves may sort of wander around and discover the stories and mumblings of other wanderers, and in time hopefully feel inspired to leave your own if you feel confident enough to do so. It was released to a wonderful response just this August, and at this point there's over 500 different messages from over 200 different people. And the messages abandoned there, they sometimes leave me breathless. I've read every single one, messages of love and loss and heartbreak and hope. Some of them so small and tentative that I never could have imagined something so simple, so personal to arise out of a game so simple. It's a journey that began about a year ago when something caused me to realize I was no longer sort of enjoying myself online or on Twitter. In fact, I found myself increasingly saddened by the experience. It wasn't making me happy or sparking joy or really giving me space to be myself in the ways I wanted to be open and small and vulnerable. There's something to the design of these online ecosystems that feels intrinsically small, harmful and unkind. And so one morning, I sort of found myself snuggled away, was in my favorite cafe, was a notebook out and a cup of coffee, and it began raining sort of haphazardly as the weather is wont to do. And I was kind of just stuck there for a bit, was nothing much for company. sort of lost wondering about how one might design these interfaces differently, how these networks might be designed to be less about intrinsic social currencies or sort of hierarchies, and more about simply having a digital space to rest and be. And what began as a simple sort of thought exercise to pass the time eventually became over 5 different pages of notes. And a lot of this, the underlying principles and the philosophies, were inspired by a document published by Tanya Short, Chelsea Howe, Daniel Cook, and similar, on designing for coziness within games. They explore different principles of psychology, such as tend and befriend, and the self-determination theory, to sort of design systems that make digital settings that feel just a little bit more warm and a little cozier. It's a wonderful document, and if you have the opportunity to read it, it's free online, and I implore that you do so. But I began designing away. At first only theoretically and haphazardly, but I sort of snuggled myself away in my room for a bit, and eventually the first line of code began. Eventually, just a few weeks later, I had an experimental prototype where you could write a message, send it off into cyberspace, and receive messages back based on your coordinates. It was simple, but it was there, and it was mine, and from there it just sort of began to grow and grow and grow. Until eventually what I had was a game that felt like my own. And visually, it was sort of increasingly inspired by smaller generative games. Well, in particular, sort of No Man's Sky, and these sort of the endless senses of loneliness I sort of found was in that game, especially in the first few hours of launch. There's something to the endless loneliness of the stars in those solar systems that I found really comforting. There's something isolating and introspective, and especially at launch, the game gave you so little to do, so your mind naturally wandered. It started thinking for itself. And that I found really kind of beautiful and captivating. There was something deeply reassuring to just being alone within a universe that didn't care if you went there or not. I think so much of generative design these days attempts to break away from the generative aspects, to make things that feel surprising or handcrafted or unique. And I think there's a real reassurance to be found in the familiarity of monotony that comes from smaller systems. There's a beautiful simplicity to it, and it's something I really wanted to evoke within my own game. However, in lieu of limited time, I really want to talk about poetry for a moment. I want to talk about spoken word and prose and what that means to me as a creator. I want to talk about poetry live. One of the oldest running spoken word nights was in Auckland, held each Tuesday night at the Thirsty Dog on Karangahape Road. It's a space within which musicians and writers, and whomever happens to be present, come together once a week to discover and express themselves in this gentle miasma of self-expression. It's the kind of space that any poet or writer in Aotearoa eventually drifts through, no matter how small or prolific. And though it's only been about 3 years since I've really kind of found my home there. At first, I was only there, snuggled away at the back over a mug of lemon herbal tea or few, shyly listening in, but falling in love with each passing moment. There was something there that felt warm and comforting and gentle and reassuring of something that was once missing. All these people who weren't speaking because they anticipated others listening, but simply because it gave them someplace to be. And so eventually I bought my first notebook, a small crumpled paperback that soon became coffee spill stained and eventually perished to a bowl of pumpkin soup. But I began writing. Only small words at first, but they were mine tentatively and shyly. Small poems and bits of prose, sort of exploring the things I was thinking through at the time. Eventually, I stumbled up onto stage one night and performed a few, and it didn't matter how unprofound or commonplace my words were. People still listened and applauded for the simple thing of bringing something along which wasn't there before. It gave me the simple permission to speak, something I hadn't felt in a really long time online. It felt gentle and reassuring. And I guess this is kind of the feeling I was hoping to explore was in the library Babble. And what I'm hoping I've sort of since shared with you all tonight. The want and need for smaller spaces of self-expression and safety. Thank you so much for listening in. I'm not really sure how relevant any of this was, but I hope it's given you something to think about, or perhaps simply convince you to keep your own notebook going forwards, because you never know what kind of game you might write down. Thank you.
I'm so glad Demi was able to make it up here to Melbourne. I truly appreciate their gentle and caring approach to their craft and find myself deeply inspired, so thank you. Our next speaker is Mohamed Chamas, a multidisciplinary artist and designer and poet based here in Naarm, Melbourne. Their practice approaches a heterogeneous union between Islamic mysticism and the contemporary technological. They dance with jinn and cyborgs in an electrified trance, calling forth cosmological, ancestral, ethnocultural, and socio-political forces to and reconstruct persisting webs of power. Could we have a huge round of applause for Mo, please? I also want to note this is going to be somewhat of a performance, so I'm looking forward to it. I will just get you back up. 1 second. No, wait, we have lost the files. Give me a second while, yeah, great, I'll grab the USB. In the meantime, though, I would like to invite our next speaker, while we deal with this, onto the stage. Our next speaker is Lucy Morris. Lucy is an internationally acclaimed game and UI/UX designer, previously having worked for studios such as Dusseldorf's Ubisoft Blue Byte and Wellington's Pickpock. She now directs her own studio, Starcult, and continues to make experimental games in her own time. Please make Lucy welcome.
I was banking on having another 8 minutes. Cute but unrelated. Kia ora, beautiful humans. Just to note that my presentation will be dealing with really difficult topics such as death, loss and grieving. This is an intensely personal piece of work, and if any of these themes distress you, please feel free to leave now. I'm not going to take it personally. I want to make sure that everyone here feels really safe and comfortable. Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with heart and soul, there is no such thing as separation. Rumi. Sudden grief in itself is complicated. The death of a loved one is something that we're rarely prepared for. Functionally or emotionally or logistically, someone in my ongoing period of healing once described grief as the waves of the ocean. It comes and goes, but never really fades. It just becomes more familiar. I'm trying to find where my mouse has gone. There we go. On the 3rd of September last year, I received a call from my older sister telling me through tears that our mum had suddenly died. And there's no real way that I can convey the feeling of receiving that call, but there's nothing else you'll ever experience like it. Acrylic was a cathartic project that has helped me deal with my grief somewhat, and if anyone knows my normal tone of work, this is so far removed from what I normally make. I normally make games about like dating and dogs and like mermaid bras and stuff, but this was like kind of a cathartic departure from that, and it's really helped me kind of catalogue those feelings as I go through them. My mother was a really fantastic acrylic artist with a great sense of humour. You can see the lady with the big boobs in the middle of the nuns. And a lover of bright colours, something that I'm very grateful that she's passed on to me and that I try to show through my work in my studio. I wrote acrylic to express my frustration and my guilt and my sadness at Mum's passing, which was very sudden. And this is a tale that I told in the form of evocative colours from the resin paint range, which was her favourite medium to create with. If anyone ever like paints with those test pots, she had like a million of them. And I'd really like to share a short excerpt of it with you all today. Please hold while I finagle windows. Tucked into the indent of the kitchen archway, a waist-height wire shelf stands laden with a myriad of resin acrylic test pots. Test pots because their original intention is for excitable new homeowners to splash them on feature walls and discuss whether duck egg blue or half opal would complement their pleather lounge suite more. A testing pot equally for the strength of their partnership and the bioremorse of buying a pleather lounge suite. However, these pots weren't destined for feature walls. Not then, anyway. There's a crumpled up New World supermarket docket tucked under one of the larger test pots. Even through your dull numbness, you pick the docket up and smooth it out. You still remember the religious ritual of saving supermarket dockets when it came time to do the grocery shop. Most of the coupons on the back were duds, but every so often there was a deal for 2-for-1 resin test pots, a delight that Mum always partook in. That's how she ended up with most of these, anyway. Most of the colours of the rainbow sit on this shelf. Instead of walls, these pots were used to create bright, cheerful works of art that were full of life. Cats with inscrutable faces, iconic scenes of New Zealand badgers by the ocean, Klimt-inspired new studies of the female form, a set of cheerful animals for her grandson's bedroom. But just like the house full of charged chattels you have to slowly sift through with your older siblings, you can't take them all with you. It's only been a month, not enough time to recover, to reconcile, to shed enough tears, to quieten your anger, to stop blaming yourself, to catalogue your regrets, to process what happened, to tell her you're sorry, to bring yourself to record that last voicemail that you know she's left on your phone but your heart just can't bear to listen to. But life, like Mum's ancient station clock in the next room, stops for no one. You have to deal with these pots. You stand in front of the kitchen sink, having dragged the shelving unit over. The faucet is running. You haven't been able to bring yourself to dispose of any of these pots yet. Automatically, you reach for one. Cabaret, a modern pink, artful and showy. Amazon, a green between jade and viridian, full of life. Bordello, a flirty mid-tone pink, adventurous and free-spirited. Poppy, a constant and bright red, marking a place of a million memories. Seacrest, equal amounts of water and sky cerulean blue. Happy, a Polynesian yellow, full of tropical sunshine and happy holidays. Studio, an animated violet, eminently precious. Aquarius, a blue inspired with the spirit of air, water and new beginnings. Or Nero, a deep black with inky blue undertones. Primary school, February 1995. You can probably calculate my age from that. When it comes time to start school, Mum is ready. She's ready. Although your family lives on a single income and things are pretty tight, Mum's always resourceful and artistic with what she has to work with. Ever the artist, your school outfits became projects for her. Someone who adored sewing, printmaking and creating. You're sent to primary school for your orientation in a handmade bright blue dress with red and yellow flowers, white socks and proper black strappy shoes. She's not done though. Years at primary school pass by with more signature Mum creations. A purple knee-length dress with a Peter Pan colour, the fabric dotted with deep red paisley and cute interfaced cuffs. A knobby cardigan knitted from bright rainbow wool that she states will be hard to ever lose you in a crowd if you're wearing it. She was right. Things only get more involved when she goes to study at the local teachers' college to get her Bachelor of Education and slips a few creative classes in amongst the mix. That's when Daft Dogs turns up. All of her creative university projects, like much of her other arts, crafts, they were beautiful, interesting solutions for problems she faces each day or draws from the world around her, a world she's always perceptively watching and appreciating for the beauty that it has. Daft Dogs became a staple for Mum. You had the neatest hat in the playground. It ended up with a floppy hat with a wide brim and bright yellow cotton sateen lining, and there was nothing like it. And she liked the somewhat derpy pattern so much it ended up on lots of other forms of her art. Canvases, pots, they're all Daft Dogs in the end. The day after she dies, you're in your home looking for something, anything that you could take back with you as a memento when it comes time to travel back to Wellington and try and resume life as it was before you lost her. Your first thought had been to take one of her paintings. You'd always loved her art and it was so intrinsically her that it was the thought that had jumped immediately to mind. The airline, which will remain nameless, thought otherwise, though, and had discouraged you from bringing a canvas home. You might have to leave it at the airport. A voice you barely hear repeats over the crackle of your weak cell phone connection. Reception had never been great in Mum's home, not with this impenetrable roof. I mean, you can always bring it and try, but you have to be prepared to leave it behind at the airport if they ask you to. Absolutely fuck that, you think politely back. What ends up in your pocket as you fly home to an empty apartment that somehow feels different, even though she'd never set foot in it, is two tiny, tiny pots. They're painted with daft cats, the spiritual successor to the mighty Daft Dog's fortune. You treasure them. The faucet is running. You have currently disposed of the following pots. Happy. Automatically, you reach for a pot. That's the end.
I have so much love and respect for Lucy and everything that she does. I wanted to thank her for her bravery and trust in presenting such a raw and vulnerable and personal game. So thank you. Okay, let's try that again. Please welcome Mohamed Chamas for Cyber Tasawwuf.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so just a really short precursor before I start. So much research has gone into this project that I can't possibly adequately explain it all in 8 minutes. So if you're interested, please come up to me and start a conversation because I sure do love talking about all of this stuff. As you will soon see. Cool. Okay. My name is... Oh, shit. Is that... Oh, yeah, it is. Oops. Let me just pause that. My name is Mohamed Chamas. My virtual reality art game, Cyber Tasawwuf, is an exploration of 6 spaces grounded in the Islamic Sufi Lataya Fasita meditation. The Lataya Fasita are 6 energy centers that emanate from within the body. They each also correspond to a level of Islamic celestial space. The meditation, or zikr, remembrance, involves progressing through each latifa, resulting in the exaltation of the inner self, fanat, or annihilation. Sufism better locates the folk religious and mystic practices of disparate ethno-cultural Muslim groups. Found across Asia, and the MENA region, they are often prosecuted for their unorthodox ways of being Muslim. In making Saiber Tasawwuf, I was interrogating the Muslim as cyborg, one that does not simply adopt technology as a new tool, but that re-enchants the presumably dead matter we think new and emerging technologies as. To reiterate, I'm challenging the disenchantment of modern devices when interfaced with spiritual practice, namely the deeply embodied medium of VR as a lever to progress through the Lataya Fasita meditation. The best way to understand the esoteric themes present is by working with the delirium. I actually wrote that. So I will be sharing 6 poems, one for each energy center, concentrating on their attributes and the way I interpreted them from my place in the world and the intersections that I embody. Some dedicate their entire lives to this topic, so I don't claim expert knowledge, just my sincere interest in understanding my lineage. Belief is often deeply personal, so I ask that you keep an open heart to my vulnerability and turn the inner eye towards your cyborg vessel. Let us begin. And let us double check that the sound is working. Ooh. Okay, the sound isn't working. Sorry. That should be working. Cool. Sorry. It's like exactly 8 minutes, so I just want to save the seconds. Cool. So, the first al-Taif is al-Nafs, the self-concept. What creates me? The breath. What sustains me? The branching avenues of potential. What I will be, what I am becoming. I breathe in, solar light. Body as open soil. What I should be, how to live. I breathe out. There is a flare within me, a burning star. I was born of decision and I live the same way. I nurture the becoming at all levels it manifests in. I am alive for myself. Slowly, the shields of this center weaken as I realize I am within and without, on and off, 1 and 0. I am contrast emerging from 2, and I split in half the whole of me in eternal search. I will progress with all parts, surging with voltage and soul. My contrast carries me through the within. I breathe in and out. El-Qalb, the heart, pulsing with energy, centerpiece to the imagistic world that constructs my eternal mythologies. Entities of a different flesh leave symbols throughout my lifeline. These symbols reflect to me the patterns I experience, the cycles and repetitions, like a heartbeat. My auntie's coffee boiled with cardamom. It holds a side of the future she may reveal by communion with the unseen. The ruins of an ancient temple that once honored a familiar star. It is said to have been built with the help of hidden beings. A carpet used for divine connection. It does not fly, though bears a holy stone at its front from a sacred land, once the place of a great battle. A prismatic crystalline mirror buzzing with vitality. Hyper-reality is filtered with a simple gesture. This place is home to This place is home to memory, and its center reveals ligaments that stretch far into the past and the future, pulsing with ancestral blood. Al-Ruh, the spirit. The breath is atomically split into a fine mist. Celestial presence envelops as far as the body can sense. Divine spark unplugged. The true electric etheric energies called forth by this center, by tall familiar beings. They stretch from one end of my vision to another. Their only optic is an outline. Their flesh is an unfathomable secret. Only a glimpse of understanding is found. And yet, ecstatic truth is achieved as witness. They will, singing a familiar song. We mimic them, almost trance-like, and together open again, a centrifugal portal, the divine spark, holy bulb, soars higher towards the within. El Sir, the secret. As we rise, the experience of knowing is agitated. Further still, this center seems to absorb the concept of known and unknown itself. All sensory information alike slips beneath mental grasp. Familiar sentiments still linger, called by perfect light, summoned by humming grid, those mystic technologies resting in the heart. Perhaps they've been made anew by fractal essence, hidden beneath symbol, a system error revealing partly spatial dream flesh that reforms into an echo of understanding. The memory of matter reveals itself as a vital interdependence, an interaction of electromagnetic auras. Consciousness permeates all, warped and perforated in a hyperreal dance of vertex and simulated matter. This is the lingering death of what is known, and as the within is deeper explored, centers grow more obtuse. The process saturates in abstraction. Khafi, the hidden. The mind has expended its use. As we progress, only essence leads our being. The tools of immanence emerge again as the outline of an echo in attempts to contextualize this place. Architectures for divine communication appear. The hidden beings dance here, and in a spillage of senses, the suggestion of their figures is made out, the trail of a new shell. We float in the presence of the meeting point of all channels, for which the world itself is a dial, forever spinning. The preordained divine attributes stem from the seat of soul back into the world. Solid is only a memory, and the ultimately unknowable aspects of oneness, which we all embody, manifest here as the sacred names. The last name expands in dimension, resounding in perpetuity. Akhfa, the innermost. The very emptiness that surrounds us is registered as material. Even nothing is not free of indivisibility. And where form once was is an empty space in motion, form in formlessness. I am no longer. The ether itself obeys the call to the eternal return. It draws soul fire, shadow self, and all vital cybernetic parts. There is a futility in even a fragment of the truth of this unknowable state, though the screen still asks. Below, the ultimate step into the within, we beg the center, make me only nothing, and it promises annihilation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohamed, for your dedication and passion to exploring your faith through your arts practice. As a Muslim myself, it's super inspiring to see other Muslims in our community making interesting work and contributing to both the games community and the arts community. Okay, we're getting close to the end now. Our next speaker will also be putting on a performance, but not on this stage. He'll be somewhere else. Douglas Wilson will be presenting Mutazione. Doug is the co-owner of Die Gute Fabrik, a game studio based in Copenhagen. He's contributed to design and programming to a number of award-winning video game projects, including Sports Friends, Johann Sebastian Joust, Button, and Mutazione. Doug now lives in Melbourne, where he's a lecturer at RMIT University, teaching and researching game design. Huge round of applause for Doug. It's quite amazing that all of that was performed live. Playing Mutazione is like snuggling up in bed with your favorite book. It's possibly the gentlest and coziest game that I've ever played. I have to try and not get emotional. I'd been looking forward to playing this game for like 10 years. And I literally cried when I launched the game, and I was just sat there on the main menu for the longest time. I have so much respect for Doug. He's been my idol and role model for the longest time. We're both workaholics, and it's really bad. But now that Mutazione is out, I hope that Doug is looking after himself. Another huge round of applause for that. That was super impressive. Okay, up next we have a very young developer, Anthony Tan, presenting Way to the Woods. This game was also presented at E3 for anyone who missed that. Anthony is a cool dude, born and raised in Melbourne. He likes to play video games sometimes. He also likes to make video games. Since graduating high school, he's been working on his debut project, Way to the Woods. He's very nervous. Please make him feel welcome.
Hey. Hey, gamers. My name's Anthony Tan. Yeah, that's about all I want to say. Like the intro said, I'm making a video game because I think video games are cool. Do you guys like video games? Woo! Please leave. Oh wait, I haven't connected my thing. So many dongles. I just want to run you through a few minutes of my game, and I'll talk about it a bit later. What is going on? That is new. I'm gonna restart it. So as you can see, I'm running it from the editor because I planned it really well. And this game is really a work in progress, and I would like to show you kind of like a sketch of what it is. And still no idea what that glitch before was. Like, I've never seen it in my life. Dear game. Okay. I'm just gonna play it in editor. There's no audio, huh? Shit. Do you know why there's no audio? So normally on the Windows 10 platform, there's like a sound device, but today there isn't. So anyway, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the mechanics in my game. I wanted to make an independent video game with like a simple mechanic that I could. What the? So I wanted to make a game with a mechanic that I could use to tell a story, and kind of flip it on its head a bit. Imagine like piano sounds and shit, like. I'll make the sounds with my mouth. I'll be like, all right. So what you can see so far, it's pretty simple. You've got this light radius, and you can collect light from the objects around you. Anything that would give light in real life, you can take the light in the game. And to me, that was like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And I could go full Katamari Damacy, you know? You could like collect all the lights in the city eventually, and you could see the progression of the game like that. And just thinking about that buzzed my brain with a billion ideas. And so I wanted to take this simple mechanic and like see how far I can push it. And so you can see an idea of what that is here. Like, oh, I can get phone messages and I can learn about the world that way. And I can use those lights to just keep moving on. I wanted to make a game because I have like this lizard brain that only likes very engaging, like FPS, Halo type stuff. Yet when I played a game like Journey, I was like captivated for some reason, and I didn't know why. And so when I was designing this game, I wanted to make a game that combined this meditative awesomeness of Journey with like FPS mechanics. Not really, but just something simple is like I'll just keep playing the game for a bit. Whoop. Oh yeah, like do-do-do-do. So it's like a simple premise, but it's like fun to do. Like when you are near an object, it'll glow like white. And to me, that was kind of trying to capture the same feeling in Halo when you cover the reticle over an enemy's head, like an alien. It turns red, and that's like really cool. And so I wanted to like no joke though, like make a fun, engaging mechanic and like tell a heartfelt story with it, because I was like, okay, I can just make another like every other game, or I can try to make something new that's like compassionate and, you know. Wish there was sound, but it's all good. Maybe. Oh, what? What am I doing? I'm just pressing buttons on my thing. Whatever. Anyway, hopefully the game still looks and functions without sound, but sound makes it 10 times better. Anyway, so you can see I can start to like introduce different mechanical like puzzles and stuff like that. Like, look, I can't reach this light, so what am I gonna do? It's the simple stuff like ram this vending machine. And it'll give me a bag of chips. And I've just been introduced to two things. My phone's disappeared, so I'm gonna feed it to myself. And I can just eat it. Thank you. If I ram it one more time, it'll disappear into the ground. That's not meant to happen. Luckily, I've done stuff. Nope, I haven't. This is going very well. Let me just start again. Oh, I forgot to set my timer. Dang it. I'm just gonna skip ahead to this one bit here with that's really much better with music. Anyway, you get into the station itself and you go through this flooded corridor and you can hear nothing but splashing footsteps and it's super ambient and it's cool. And then you get these fish that start following you and then it goes whoosh and the music's like dun 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 and the theme is there. And you'll run across these billboards that start to tell this like story and it's like, what happened to this world? Where are all the people? And then you see these like mysterious, vaguely, mentally like positive ads. And you also notice that these fish give you light now. So it's like, hey, if I go through here and I start exploring this abandoned station while the music's popping off, I'll start to see the structure of a real game start to form. And it's like, hey, traditional puzzles, like sick. And my goal for this section of the game is to introduce you to all these mechanics and, you know, get all this stuff out the way. What can I do? And stuff like that. Get all this like regular stuff. And then later throughout the game, like flip it on its head and see how deep can a story go with this as the driving mechanic. Yeah, it's a fish and chips shop. So I'm like combining these mechanics of like, yay, I can ram glass to get fish to get light, and it's like, sick. Because I think it's cool when games like the mechanics cross over. Anyway, can't reach it. Okay, I'm gonna end it there because cool. Anyway, it ends in a wolf chase and it's kind of cool. When it works. That's why it's not out yet. But how long do I have? 3 minutes. Okay, cool. So I just want to talk about the story of the game itself and where I want to take it and why I made it in the first place. And so when I started Way to the Woods, it was like 3 years ago, and I was in high school, like in year 11, 12, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And I came up with this sentence to describe the story, and that is, Way to the Woods is a journey through the unknown. And at that time in my life, the unknown was everything, my future, where I want to go, how I want to get there. And all my friends were talking about the same stuff, you know, they're like entering uni, they don't know what course they want to do, they don't know why they want to do it. And I just thought that was a really interesting human story. So it was surrounded by so much stuff though, like subjects in uni, so I wanted to strip it all away and tell it in the most non-human way possible, which is deers. And like legit though, because then I think about what can I say without all the mess that surrounds every other game? You know, like, there's a lot in Way to the Woods that has to do with what you can't do. So deers don't have fingers, and there's a lot of finger-related activities in the game, like, shh, that's bad. Picking locks and, you know, stuff like that. And so I wanted to just keep exploring the unknown, you know, like, so, what am I saying? Anyway, I wanted to tell this story of traveling through the unknown in a completely detached way to give the player a space to kind of just breathe and meditate with a game that's not saying anything to them implicitly or explicitly, whereas it lets you experience it on its own. And so when I thought about stuff like my future and the unknown, I got like really stressed out, and then I realized like, okay, I just need to take a chill pill. I need to just like relax and just see what's up. And so I wanted this game to be kind of like a space, like a experience, like a pill that you can like take. You can sit down with it, and then go through this 2-hour experience where you get attached to this phone, you go through this entire journey, and the game itself consists of 5 chapters, which are completely bizarre. So you like can enter a cat town, and you can explore abandoned malls, and you can see everything that we've built as humans in a place completely like without humans at all. And I thought that like getting that outside otherworldly perspective of the cool things that we've done really let me take a breather and kind of like just reassess myself as a, you know, like as a person amongst many, and just like my priorities and stuff. So that's like the old deep philosophical shit about my game. But at the same time, I really love the presentation about Need for 4 Billion Speed, because it's like really funny and it's fun. And so with my game, I wanted to like have all that deep stuff, but I also wanted to have this like a charming, fun world where you can do dumb stuff, like you can pick up chips and you can eat it, and you can like ram vending machines, and it gets all whimsical and the music's so cute. And so I just really wanted to have this like charming experience. And I'm sorry there was no sound, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. Great. Thank you so much, Anthony. I'm so impressed that Anthony's managed to make such a charming, wonderful looking and sounding, I promise you, game. I'm so proud of you, Anthony, and I'm super excited to see where you take the project next. All right, we're up to our final game. We have Grace Bruxner and Thomas Bowker presenting the Frog Detective series. Grace Bruxner is the creative director of Worm Club, a small Melbourne-based studio that she runs with her partner, Thomas Bowker. In 2018, they released the successful game, The Haunted Island, a Frog Detective game, and have been hard at work on the sequel, Frog Detective 2, The Case of the Invisible Wizard, ever since. The game is super, super charming, and I'm super, super excited for it. So let's make Grace and Tom welcome.
Karaoke. Don't go breaking my heart.
I couldn't if I tried.
Oh, honey, if I get restless.
I couldn't if I tried.
We have an exciting announcement. we're going to decide who the best audience member is. We'll be watching you very closely. If you're the best audience member, you get a prize. So behave. Hello, I'm Grace. This is Tom. That's me. There's no audio again. Who's bloody... Oh, that's all right.
It's okay?
That's okay. I'll be the audio again.
Sorry, Dan.
Sorry, Dan.
Oh, is he...
Don't go breaking my heart. I couldn't if I tried. Oh, honey, if I get restless.
Okay,
Couldn't if I tried. Anyway, hello. I'm just going to talk while they figure that out. So originally I was going to talk about the privileges and disadvantages that me and Tom have had making this game to give a more like transparent view of how we got to where we are. Oh, nice. I'm constantly frustrated at the simplification of success or non-success and how we are like drawn to neat narratives around game development. I think 8 minutes is probably not it's probably not enough time to delve into this, but I want to acknowledge that I've heard whisperings of early career folks and students having anxiety or overconfidence, seeing myself and my game succeed what is perceived as quickly. I just want to say that it's not that simple, and I want to encourage you all to go at your own pace, because basing your self-worth on whether or not you're at the same level of someone else isn't healthy or productive. Frog Detective didn't get anywhere by comparing themselves to Lobster Cop. So instead of talking about that tonight, I just want to play the game because it's very nice and we did a good job. We made something that is very special to us, and a bit of context about my history. I grew up without much games literacy, and I think that's a big part of what informed the way I design games now. My former games were criticised for not having enough to do. People liked them, but their only mechanic was walking around and looking at stuff, which rules. Anyway, we made Frog Detective because people kept asking me, what if you made a game in which I can do something? And I was like, fine. And then Frog Detective happened, and that's the entire story, and neither myself or Tom had anything to do with the creation of Frog Detective. We think maybe a witch cursed us to create it in our sleep. Anyway, time to play the game. I would also like to say that Tom has a second curse, which is that he doesn't know how to speak on stage, but he can obviously sing. Anyway, please welcome to the stage the third and final member of Worm Club, Dan Golding. Nobody knows this, but Dan is actually the voice of the Frog Detective, as it turns out.
I came here not knowing I was doing this.
Okay. Oh my stars! It's you!
The frog's voice is just me. It's me!
The famous lobster cop. I really thought you'd be a lobster.
No, I'm a frog.
Yeah. Why is your name Lobster Cop?
I have to tell you something. I am not Lobster Cop.
Why not?
I don't know how to answer that.
Who are you?
I'm the detective. Frog detective.
I see. Was Lobster Cop not available?
Unfortunately not.
Well, I think you'll do just fine.
Thanks.
I'm Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. I'm the one that contacted the agency, which I think you'll find excludes me from being a suspect.
Oh, I didn't know that was how it worked.
You should know these things, detective.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think you should still question me, though, to remove all doubt.
Okay.
Question me all you like.
Do you know the wizard personally?
Nobody knows her personally. Well, not here at least. Not me.
Right.
But I had a lot to do with the organization of the parade. And I was the one to start the investigation.
You mentioned that.
It's worth bringing up again.
So you were fine with her moving to the town?
Absolutely. That old house has been empty for years, and it's really nice someone wants to live there. It needs a lot of fixing up, but it would be nice soon, I think. Plus, it's always exciting to have a new neighbor.
Sure is.
Question me all you like.
Where were you on the night in question?
I was at home, knitting a rug for the wizard.
Really?
Oh yes, I picked all the colors myself and everything. Though I'll admit it's a bit hard to focus on knitting.
Why is that?
I get so distracted by the wool. It's so fun to play with. I play with it so much that I unravel the whole thing and it goes everywhere. It's a big nuisance.
I understand.
But I was concentrating on the knitting so much, I didn't notice the destruction of the parade. I'm sorry.
Did you notice anything at all?
Now that I think of it, I saw a big van out near the entrance to Warlock Woods. It didn't drive in, or I would have heard it. I didn't worry about it at the time, of course. That's all I remember. Sorry.
No worries.
Question me all you like. New feature. Book. Mary. That's naughty. Mary. What? Ooh, wow.
Hello?
Hello, frog.
Hello. What's your name?
I'm Mary.
Nice to meet you.
You too. Did you like my song?
Yeah.
I've been practicing all day and all night. Oh, that's her voice. That's Susan's voice.
Are you okay?
I'm tired.
Huh. Maybe you should get some sleep.
Maybe.
You sing very loudly.
Yep. I'm what everyone soundproof their houses.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah, but that's not really my problem. I think I sound very good, even late at night.
How late?
I love to sing at 3 a.m.
Wow.
That's when my energy is the highest.
That doesn't sound very healthy.
My health is my business.
I guess that's true. Sorry.
That's okay. Maybe I should listen to some soft sounds before bed. Whisper. Welcome to my hair salon. Snip. That will be $100.
I don't have any hair or any dollars.
That's okay. You can pay me back later. Just joking. Anyway, who are you?
I'm the detective.
Ooh, cool. Can you question me?
Do you mind if I ask? Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh boy, I love questions.
What do you know about the wizard that moved in?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't actually hear you.
I was asking about the wizard.
Oh. Yeah, there's a wizard. She just moved in. Why?
I'm a detective.
Right. This is part of the questioning, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So I didn't do any crimes or anything. And I have the right to remain silent.
Yeah, but do you want to remain silent?
Haha, literally never. So, I heard that Ralph was super weird about the new wizard moving in. Also, I heard that Mandy was in a bad mood the night that the parade was destroyed. And I heard that Noddy didn't even realize the wizard was coming. And that's all, actually. Does this make me a snitch?
I think so.
Dang it. Oh boy, I love questions. Hey Chad, how much time have we got? What does that mean? We got 5 minutes, hell yeah.
What were you doing when the parade was destroyed?
Oh boy, yeah. Sucks that the parade was destroyed. Oh, we're doing questioning. What was I doing? Not much, just singing outside.
You were outside when the parade was destroyed.
Yeah.
Did you see anyone destroy it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Who did it?
Dunno.
Didn't you see them?
I mean, I saw the parade being destroyed, but I didn't see who it was. It was foggy that night. Plus, I was really into the song.
Did you hear anything?
I was singing really loud. I could only hear myself.
Okay.
Oh boy, I love questions. Let's go see Ralph. Okay, go see Ralph. Hello, little frog. I'm Ralph.
Why are you yelling?
I'm just making sure you can hear me.
I can hear you. You don't have to yell.
You're very small. Might be difficult for you to hear.
I'm small, but I'm also very close to you. Being small isn't the same as being far away.
Are you sure? You can hear me at this volume.
Yes.
Weird.
I'm the detective. I'm here to solve the mystery.
Really?
Yes.
But you're so small.
I'm of average frog height. Can I ask you some questions about the case?
Questioning me, huh?
How do you feel about the wizard moving in?
It's nothing against the wizard, but I've been living with my friend Carlos for some time now, and our space is big. But I would really like my own home.
Oh.
I've been eyeing off that old house for ages. I thought maybe I'd move in one day. But the wizard got there first.
I see.
It's my fault, I guess. I shouldn't hold it against the wizard.
This house is twice as big as all the other houses. Maybe you could renovate it and turn it into 2 houses. You could split it down the middle. Or have one house upstairs and one house downstairs. like an apartment.
That's a pretty cool idea. I like Carlos and everything, but I'm a private boy.
I understand.
Thanks for the tip, detective. Maybe I'll have a building montage.
I'm excited to see it.
Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Now it's time to announce the winner of the audience contest. I've been watching you all very, very closely, and I have the results right here. The winner of the audience contest is someone called Aspen. Aspen, is there an Aspen here? Come on down. Wow, I can't believe it. This was calculated very scientifically using my best audience skills. I was watching you all the entire time. Congratulations, Aspen! Says Aspen. Don't worry if you didn't win, it's just because you're less good of an audience member. All right, thanks for watching our presentation.
All right, we've made it to the end. So before I end everything, not the world, just this event, I just want to mention that we're about to open up the salon, which is kind of a new thing to Parallels. We'll have a little social event happening where you can kind of mingle and have a drink if you'd like. So the volunteers will kind of guide you towards the exits on the sides for that. The bar downstairs at the entrance will be serving the drinks, and then you can come back up to the salon and mingle for a bit. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's Parallels. Parallels, I hope, was a breath of fresh air to remind us all that games can be gentle, they can be nurturing and caring. I hope that Parallels has inspired you and touched you. And I want to encourage you all to continue to make weird, experimental and personal games. I want you all to continue to demand support from your government, from your funding bodies to support these sorts of games. And I hope that with your voice lended to us, we can continue to make infrastructure to support these sorts of games as well. So there's a few people that I'd like to thank. If you could please leave your applause to the very end, that would be great. I'm trying to get through this as fast as possible. Freeplay is proudly supported by the Australian Government through the Australia Council for the Arts, its arts funding body and advisory committee. We want to thank RMIT and ACMI, a million thanks for providing us this fantastic space. When Parallels sold out last year, at 360 tickets, I was like, oh, where are we going to find a bigger space than that? And so I'm so happy that the Capitol is now the new home for Parallels, seating and selling out at 550 seats. I'd like to thank Creative Victoria for hosting Melbourne International Games Week and doing such an excellent job with that, and for continuing to include us in the program and for supporting all the amazing things that's happening in the Victorian games sector. There's a couple of people that I'd like to thank on our team. I'd like to thank Ben Turner, Jean Maxwell, Pradika Sachdev, Marigold Bartlett, Cecile Richard, and the Freeplay board for all their help and support. I'd like to thank our volunteers, Nathaniel, Morgan, and Yasemin, for helping out with the event. I'd like to thank the generous people who donated a pay it forward ticket. All of those found a home, and we all super appreciate that you did that, so thank you. I'd like to thank all our speakers once again for trusting in Freeplay and its audience and giving themselves permission to be in such a vulnerable place. And I want to thank you all for coming. And that's it. Hope to see you back here for Freeplay 2020 in May. Thank you.